Welcome back to making Fallowind, an indie psychological horror game that was supposed to be finished a year ago. I started development last summer, hoping to make a short Silent Hill 2 inspired horror game and release it in time for Halloween. The premise being that you're searching a spooky industrial site for a woman who you can only communicate with on a walkie-talkie. Unfortunately, by Halloween, the scariest thing about Fallowind was that I was going to have to work on it for an entire another year. Despite the core mechanics being finished, I didn't feel ready to commit to building the rest of the game. At this point, if I'd continued and just made more of the same, Fallowind would have been pretty boring. I felt like it was missing something. It needed the Stardew to its valley, or the animal to its well, or the hackers to its chainsaw massacre.
She's hacking. Oh my god. She's definitely hacking.
It simply wasn't unique enough. People are just pumping out games, and Fallowind wouldn't stand out in a sea of slop. So what did I do? I did the same thing that every indie game dev does. I added a grappling hook. I'm just kidding. Instead, I did some soul searching and felt like the game's story could really be improved. So before even touching the Godot project, I spent a long time in Google Docs writing out character descriptions, backgrounds, and even writing a thesis for the game. This gave me much more direction for the rest of development and gave the story purpose. Like, there are things that I hope players will think about even after completing Fallowind. Things like, why was the woman trapped there? And how is it possible that Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt 2 is worse than the original? If you're curious, here's some actual themes. One of the largest thematic shifts for Fallowind has been a strong influence from Homer. You know, the one who wrote that movie that just came out, and I think Interstellar? I found this weird parallel between Fallowind's original story, parts of the Odyssey, and my life, which led me to just plagiarize Homer, giving Fallowind a completely unique and original identity. This manifests during gameplay as Roman and Greek iconography, which all have their own little meanings and interpretations. For example, I added this new side character, a mailman, who's based on somebody from the Odyssey, but I'm not telling you who. He helps mix up the game by introducing this strong millennial aura, and he prevents the game from getting too good. At this point, the game definitely had better direction, though I still felt like it wasn't quite unique enough, but before dealing with that, I wanted to check up on the gameplay side of things and make sure I wasn't designing any kind of modern torture device. But you may ask, how does one know if they designed a modern Iron Maiden? Let me introduce playtesting. All you have to do is let somebody else critique the very thing that you've spent hundreds of hours working on without letting your soul shatter into a million little tiny pieces. Anyways, I managed to do 4 sets of playtesting, and I'm going to show you the 3 problems that made me realize just how easy it is to hurt people. As you might know from Fallowind's first devlog, the game uses multiple camera types and it swaps between them whether inside or outside. Inside buildings, it uses a modern first-person camera, and while outside it uses a kind of classic retro remote third-person camera system. Well, it turns out that unless you're the one who made it, using the classic camera system is like drunk driving, but way less fun. It's clunky and confusing, and now that I'm plagiarizing Homer, the retro camera just isn't necessary for the game's identity. I considered swapping to tank controls, which is how old retro games dealt with these weird camera systems, but after much internal struggle, I decided to completely replace the old system with a more modern third-person camera, as seen in Fortnite. It took me like 5 minutes to make, and was obviously better for players even if I spent a million hours on that old system. Now, one of the biggest challenges in game dev is communicating to each player's singular brain cell and letting them know what they're supposed to do, especially since I don't want my psychological horror mystery game to have a bunch of pop-ups.
Exiting narrator. El narrador se ha cerrado inesperadamente.
And since Fallowind is a quite mechanically simple game, I didn't really expect players to have much difficulty progressing, but almost instantly they proved me wrong, and I watched them walk right past a ton of different important spots. So what I did was make every interactable thing that is something you can walk up to and do something at sparkle.
Yo, did he just walk up slowly?
To do this, I used inheritance. Basically, every single item, whether it's a key, a map, or a vibrator for a 2001 music rail shooter video game, has the same basic code. This saves me from writing a ton of identical code, and it also makes it really easy to implement something into all items at once. So I added a few lines so that every time the player gets within a certain distance of an item, it will sparkle, grabbing the player's attention. But even that wasn't enough for the average gamer to successfully find the starting map item. Playtesters were just wandering around aimlessly like dementia patients. At the recommendation of one of the patients, I hit a U-turn and reframed the very beginning of the game. This way, right at the start, the player can see where the map is. Just by changing the side of the road the game started on, progression became much more intuitive for players. Once I had ironed out previous mechanics, it was time to start making new ones. With that shared interactable code and inheritance from playtesting, it was really easy to make a myriad of new interactable objects, from collectible items to viewpoints to fidget spinners. And now that Fallowind had a clear direction and things to fill up the levels, I needed to actually make those levels, so I started making new overworlds and buildings to explore, each with their own unique puzzles, dialogue, and video game movies. My favorite of these new sections I've added is this dark underground area that's particularly creepy. I've been working on it forever, and it felt hopeless for a long time because it just looked like the old Overwatch Alpha gameplay, but it recently started coming together after I kind of investigated how lighting works in Godot, and everything kind of just finally clicked. So now we've incorporated Homer's Odyssey into the story, streamlined old mechanics through playtesting, and absolutely generated new content like Google AI when it just lies to me. But even after all of that, I kind of felt like Fallowind still wasn't unique enough. And uniqueness is very important. It takes a long time to make a video game, especially solo, and I just can't match the rate at which AAA studios like Ubisoft release their crap into the world, meaning that the stuff I put my time into needs to stand out next to the 3,000 friend slot games that are released every damn second.
Can you hear anyone else?
You need to be.
2,000. And try again. If it doesn't work, I'm not playing.
It crashed.
So I decided to make Fallowind weirder. I started mixing in with the wrong crowd, taking influence from art house movies and video games. I'd go out into the night and join illegal underground gaming rings, discussing things normal people couldn't handle. Artistic expression and abstract visuals over commercial success. I would have never dreamt of this back in the days of playing Clash Royale in the suburbs. Anyways, I found the art house genre to work especially well in tandem with the psychological thriller genre, because they both kind of tend to abandon reliability. Let me explain. No matter the medium, movies, video games, the point of the psychological horror genre is that the audience doesn't understand what to believe.
It knows it knows the name of my cat.
We don't know who to trust, who to fear, and sometimes we never even learn. We can see this in movies like The Thing, Burning, Nacho Libre, and of course in games like Silent Hill 2 and Inscription. In The Thing, you're constantly questioning who's the monster. In Burning, an unreliable narrator makes it impossible to know who can be trusted.
하나밖에 없는 사람이라고. 그 말을 듣는데.
What the fuck?
And in Nacho Libre, you can't decide if you should be laughing or canceling Minecraft Steve on Twitter. Meanwhile, art house games ignore rational or popular gameplay in favor of artistic expression. You can see this in games like Dujana, which is an amazing claymation commentary in Death and War, and Chirk, which is a beautiful and eerie lesbian visual novel with amazing music. But the game that influenced me the most, despite not officially being art house or lesbian, since I think it was supposed to have good gameplay, is the 1993 point-and-click adventure game Return to Zork is simultaneously the most awesome game and worst designed game I have ever fucking seen. As an essentially nonsensical plot where you're the winner of a wizard sweepstake and you also have to save a kingdom. The characters and puzzles are just as confusing, which makes them really funny, but also literally impossible to solve. And on top of it all, the game is just brutally unforgiving. So both the psychological horror and art house genres depend on a lack of reliability. For psychological horrors, not being able to trust anything, and for the art house genre, not being able to rely on common game mechanics or themes. So to make Fallowind more unique, I've decided to create this evil concoction of the two. As the story develops, everything becomes less and less stable, and you never know what's going to happen next. As you play, you'll notice more symbolism and allusions to the Odyssey. But don't worry, the game should be understandable for those of you who are still avoiding spoilers for a book that's 3,000 years old. But it's not just the story. As the game progresses, the gameplay itself is also going to get weird. For example, a previously established game mechanic, like that map that nobody could find, might start behaving differently. By removing this expectation of consistent gameplay, I'm kind of able to do whatever I want as long as it continues the story, and because of that, Fallowind has kind of become a bit of a sandbox for me. Sometimes I'll just get bored, make a new Godot scene, and end up making an entirely unique minigame. This has also led me to start experimenting visually and incorporating other artistic mediums like photography and even paintings into the game. I don't think I'm the first person to do this combo of psychological horror and art game, but I'm too scared of getting mogged to play mouthwashing. On a positive note, I'm really happy with where Fallowind is at, and I feel like if I stumbled across the game as a stranger, I would really like it, and I'd even think it's unique. Unfortunately, it's much easier to Zorkify a game than it is to finish one, and I don't really expect Fallowind to be done till sometime in 2027. I'd still really appreciate if you would go wishlist the game. Last time I estimated that with enough wishlists, I could make a rough hourly wage of 78 cents, but I'm afraid that was a vast miscalculation. Please! If you want to catch the next devlog update, hopefully not a year from now, go ahead and subscribe. If you'd like to reach out to me, especially if you'd like to help market the game at release, my business email is in the description. And if you have any suggestions for Fallowind, leave a comment. And while you're down there, you might just want to give that like button a little tickle. You're still here? Yeah, I've never been alone with you. Pretty strange. Okay, bye.